Tonight on Politicat, an Evanston election special. With Election Day just 4 weeks away, the two candidates fighting for the city's top office will be here.
Plus, a school district in distress, how candidates for District 65 school board aim to course correct amid financial turmoil.
And saying goodbye, with all 9 council seats up for grabs, 2 retiring members reflect on their years in office.
All that and more tonight on a Politicat special report.
It's your Evanston politics
right now. Good evening and welcome to Politicat's Evanston election special. I'm Jonas Calderon-Blum.
And I'm Logan Schiciano. In 28 days, Evanstonians will head to the polls to determine the future of their city's government. There's a lot on the ballot this election cycle. First-term Mayor Daniel Biss faces a challenge from political newcomer Jeff Boarini.
Evanston will also elect a city clerk and representatives for all 9 seats on city council.
And both local school districts each have 4 seats up for grabs.
The April 1st election comes as the city is grappling with a number of key issues. Joining us now to explain is Wilhelm. Lance, what should residents be paying attention to as they head to the polls?
Yeah, Jonas, a lot of issues to keep in mind, but let's start with one that's going to be seeing some action here very soon, and that's the relocation of Evanston's city government offices. Now, for decades, the offices have been here at the Morton Civic Center at 2100 Ridge Avenue, but the process of moving to the new Lorraine H. Morton City Hall has already begun. The big question that's still up in the air is where the permanent home of the city offices will be for decades to come. There are 4 options on the table. 1, renovate the old Civic Center. 2, continue to rent the new City Hall space that they've already started to move to as a temporary home. 3, renovate Evanston Public Library into a shared space between city government and the library. Or 4, integrate a new City Hall space into a pending renovation of 900 Clark Street. Now, Northwestern students, you'll know that as the space where Chili's is right now. And here you can see the 20-year cost estimates of all those options. This one is still under investigation as of now, but clearly it's an expensive issue, which means it's an important one. Now, the current City Council will vote on whether to eliminate this first option here, renovating the current Civic Center, coming up on March 10th. But the other 3 options will certainly be on the table as the new council takes their seats. This second issue is one of particular importance because it will have impacts on the city for decades to come, and that's Envision Evanston 2045. This is something that's been billed by Mayor Biss and supporters as a comprehensive plan to navigate into the future of Evanston and includes everything from rezoning and development of affordable housing to parks and transportation. There's 76, count them, goals in the latest policy draft, the 20-year-long initiative, which is currently being reviewed by Evanston's Land Use Commission. There will surely be continued spirited debate leading up to September, which is when the commission is slated to make a recommendation to City Council. From there, it's up to City Council to decide how, if at all, to implement the plan. The third topic I wanted to mention is one that's a bit more wide-ranging but has proven to be important for the city, and that's environmental initiatives. Evanston officials have proposed a number of progressive and demanding plans to reduce waste and emissions in the city. The city has already gotten a climate action and resilience plan in place, which calls for carbon neutrality and zero waste by 2050 and 100% renewable energy by 2030. Recently, City Council has been considering additional measures to help the city reach those goals. And that's where we get the Healthy Buildings Ordinance, which has become quite controversial. It would essentially require all buildings of 20,000 square feet or more to be in compliance with the existing climate goals of the city, meaning the buildings would need to become energy efficient and achieve zero emissions by 2050. It's a lofty ask and one that's ruffled the feathers of a lot of property owners in the city, including Northwestern, which owns a lot of those big buildings which would need to comply with the ordinance. Regardless of the specifics on what Evanston ends up asking of its residents when it comes to climate policy, it's a topic that's sure to be on the docket of officials during these next couple years. And Jonas, the last thing I'll mention is that all these issues will take place under a Trump administration that has already proven to be frustrating for Evanston's generally very progressive policy goals. And I'm sure that's something we'll see continue to happen as the new officials come into office.
It's certainly a lot to keep in mind there. Thank you, Lance.
Let's take a look at the ward map. You may notice those lines are drawn a bit differently from in years past. That's because April's election is the first since Evanston completed a years-long redistricting project. The new map will officially take effect on May 12th. And in the city's 7th ward, which includes parts of Northwestern's campus, it's wide open with current council member Eleanor Ravel retiring. As two new candidates are crisscrossing the ward, I looked into how the controversy around the university's project to rebuild Ryan Field has become a defining issue in this race.
It's been 469 days since Evanston City Council paved the way for Northwestern to rebuild Ryan Field and use the soon-to-be-completed stadium for concerts and other commercial purposes. But in the race to represent Evanston's 7th ward, where the new stadium is being built, those developments are now taking center stage.
Wow, is it a gorgeous day.
That's candidate Kerry Mundy. He signed a petition supporting Northwestern's quest to rebuild the stadium, but he also says he feels for residents who have been affected by the ongoing construction.
The reality is I'm kind of straight up the middle and advocating for both interests because they make sense.
His opponent, Periel Davis, has been an outspoken critic of the rebuild since the beginning. She spoke with NNN in October 2023 as she fought to secure a community benefits agreement from the university.
They're trying to claim that they don't have enough money to rebuild a stadium that is not crumbling from what I can see and is still perfectly usable.
Davis is also vice president of the Most Livable City Association, which sued Evanston after the city approved the project and the rezoning associated with it, alleging the city failed to protect residents in negotiations.
Our city council did not do a good job at facilitating and being the arbiter of that community benefits agreement. It should have been an initiative that came from the city council instead of the residents who were gathering together to push together.
Mundy says Davis's stark anti-stadium stance inspired him to launch his bid for council.
My opponent in this race is one who is divisive in the community and pits neighbor against neighbor, and that engaged me and charged me to get off the couch.
As the work on the stadium continues, Mundy says he's focused on engaging with the city and Northwestern in discussions.
When I say the relationship needs to be reset, it's just one where our tone is civil, our intention is genuine, and we just want to get along and be the best Evanston we can.
But Davis doesn't buy it.
Do you feel like he would kind of defend the residents in that area?
No, not at all.
Both candidates also have ties to Northwestern beyond Ryan Field. Mundy earned his commission as a United States naval officer from the university, while Davis was a strong supporter of Northwestern graduate workers' push to unionize a few years back.
And turning now to the race for mayor, incumbent Daniel Biss is squaring off against Jeff Boarini, a longtime Evanston resident who retired from a career in corporate media production in 2016. Both men stopped by our studio last week to discuss their candidacies, and here's part of my conversation with Mayor Biss. And Mayor Biss, thank you for joining me. So I want to get started on just a more broad overview of the campaign. What separates you from Boarini you're running against?
Well, I'm really proud of my record these last 4 years. I think we've made remarkable progress on a couple different trajectories. A lot on affordable housing, on sustainability, on public safety reform, making good on major promises, all while having a responsive and transparent government and really stabilizing and improving the morale in our city government. And I'm proud of that record. And what I would say is, this is a serious moment. This is a tough time in America. Donald Trump is the president. There are threats coming at us from all directions. We need somebody with experience, with a track record that the community can count on to actually continue moving us forward. We cannot afford right now to just sit still.
And so with that, I want to start talking about something that's very important to both the Northwestern and the Evanston communities, and that was this Ryan Field project, which got approved by City Council. The final zoning approval took your tie-breaking vote.
Right.
And there's a lot of Evanston residents that opposed that plan. How do you convince those voters to support you?
Well, I'm really proud of what we did with that and proud of the enthusiasm and support that I've seen from across the community. Obviously, it's a divisive issue. There's folks on both sides. Here's what I would say. The new Ryan Field will be where the old Ryan Field was, with smaller capacity, a beautiful state-of-the-art new facility that the community will have a lot of access to, paid for entirely, of course, by Northwestern. And after 150 years of a relationship where, quite frankly, if I'm being honest, the city has not gotten what it should from the university financially, as a part of this negotiation, we struck a record deal in terms of what's coming to the city from the university. $3 million a year starting a couple years ago for 15 years, $2.5 million of guaranteed tax revenue for 15 more years starting in a couple years, $1 million for nonprofits, money for racial equity, money for our schools, money for downtown revitalization. It's a record level of support from Northwestern to the city of Evanston. I think that's something for us to be proud of. Now, in order to make that happen, we had to accept having 6 concerts a year. And I know that there are people who don't like that idea, and there's people who are going to find that frustrating. Ultimately, I think that the trade-off is worth it.
I want to dig a little deeper onto the town and gown relationship. When we're talking about something like the Healthy Buildings Ordinance, the university opposes that ordinance, but it is being very supported right now, it seems, at least a little bit, by our council. How do you juxtapose the university wanting more input on something like that with your duties as a mayor?
Well, you know, I would respectfully challenge the question. I don't think this is about the university wanting more input. Every single stakeholder in this town deserves to give all the input they might want to give, and we need to take it seriously. We do when that's coming from Northwestern or when it's coming from any other stakeholder. But Northwestern shouldn't be calling the shots. We need to do what's right on climate policy. We need to do what's right that meets our residents' expectations. We need to do what's right to achieve our own climate objectives that were adopted unanimously by City Council 7 years ago. And as mayor, I'm not prepared to let Northwestern dictate our climate policy to us.
Envision Evanston 2045 is a massive rezoning project for the city of Evanston, and you've called it immoral to delay this project, although it has been delayed by council. How do you plan to get this across the finish line? I know that they did announce, I believe, a new date for considering further measures, but what is the finish line here? How do we get there?
Well, just because how you asked the question, I do want to just say on the top, I certainly said a stupid thing, and I regret it. And you know, I think it's important for us to be honest when our words don't reflect our beliefs and our values. What I was trying to get across there, and if you read the whole statement, I think you can see that's what I was trying to say, though I didn't say it the way I should have, is that it's a mistake to do this too fast, and it's a mistake to do it too slow. It's a mistake to do it too fast because you might wind up with an output that's not good enough, that doesn't do the job, or because you don't get input from across the community, that you don't allow people in every neighborhood to truly sit with all the ideas and work together to formulate an outcome that makes sense for them. At the same time, it's a mistake to go too slow because what's at stake here is significant. This is about having an Evanston where our public school teachers can afford to live and people can afford to age in place and young families can afford to move here. It's about maintaining our diversity. And it's about affordability at all income levels. It's about sustainability and climate action. It's about revitalizing our downtown. It's about relieving folks' property tax burdens. And by the way, the changes that are being talked about here would have a very gradual impact. So it's about achieving these really important objectives gradually, so it doesn't make sense to wait longer than necessary. So we need to do it right, take the time needed, and not take more than that.
All right, so I really have one final question. It's more talking about if you were to win this election that's coming up, what would be your first priority, or if you want to talk about more, what would you carry over from your first term in office to your new term?
Well, carrying over, our affordable housing work is pivotal. That includes Envision Evanston, that includes putting assets to work, that includes improving our inclusionary housing ordinance. There's a lot of things we need to do because I think we have an affordability crisis really at all price points. So that's critical. Next, revitalizing our downtown. We've made progress. Very soon there's going to be a groundbreaking at the North Light Theater. That's a huge win for downtown. We brought UL, a major business, into our downtown, but there's a lot more we have to do. So that's a key priority. And then finally, we need to stabilize our budget. We've been able to pass 4 budgets with no property tax increases during my time as mayor, but we have major costs coming at us and structural challenges. And so we need to have a long-term plan to pay for our priorities and do it in a way that does not unduly burden our taxpayers.
Mayor Daniel Biss, thank you so much for joining us.
I really appreciate the conversation. Thank you.
And again, our thanks to Daniel Biss for joining us. Coming up, does City Council have a communication problem? Mayoral candidate Jeff Boarini thinks so, and we'll hear from the challenger after the break.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
One, two, three, four.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. As we preview Evanston's elections, no race is bigger than the race for mayor, and perhaps no incumbent has faced more vocal opposition from residents than Mayor Daniel Biss. A group called Better Than Biss formed after the mayor cast the tie-breaking vote in support of the Ryan Field rezoning, and now those Biss detractors have a candidate who thinks he could do the job of mayor better than Biss. Here's my sit-down with mayoral candidate Jeff Boarini. Jeff Boarini, thank you so much for joining us here. Special edition Evanston election show. We really appreciate you coming in.
Happy to be here, Logan. Thank you.
So I'm really excited to talk to you about your run for mayor. Obviously, you are an outsider when it comes to politics in general and Evanston politics here. Your opponent, Mayor Daniel Biss, is the incumbent and has even tested his political capital on the state level as well. So being kind of a political outsider, what made you want to jump into this race, and what makes you excited about the prospects of potentially serving as the next mayor of the city?
Well, I've lived here for 34 years, and I love Evanston. This is my home, and I just began to watch city council and activities there, and I became concerned by what I saw about financially things being done, which I'd never seen done or wasn't allowed to do in my corporate career. And also then just things coming before the city council that had clearly been baked or been planned for weeks and months. And my background is project management, and so I could see that how much has gone into them. And there hadn't been any public input into it. And people were at the podium unhappy, and they're not being listened to. And I know from project management, too, that the way that you do a successful project is that you, before any pen hits paper, you get everybody into the room who's got a stake, who needs to be at the table, particularly the people who you think are going to have objections or critical input or things like that, because you want to be able to incorporate that when things are movable, and you can adopt and hopefully incorporate some of their input. And even if you can't, then they at least feel like they've been heard and participated in the process. That wasn't going on. I felt like the best place I could add my managerial and leadership skills was as mayor, and that's why I jumped in.
One of the defining issues of Mayor Biss's first term directly relates to Northwestern and was the project to rebuild Ryan Field. And of course, Mayor Biss cast the tie-breaking vote to approve rezoning for commercial purposes at that new stadium. You've been outspoken in your criticism for kind of how the mayor handled that whole process. If you were mayor during these past couple years when all of that was going through city council, what would you have done differently in that position?
I think, going right back to the previous question, the first thing I would do was start with better input from the residents around Ryan Field. And so I know that Northwestern was in a hurry to get going with this so they would have the stadium ready for their 2027 season. So that step didn't happen, but that's one thing I would have done certainly from the beginning. And try to incorporate that input as much as possible and adapt to it. The other thing I would have done very differently is put together a negotiating team to negotiate on behalf of the city. Instead of allowing certain council members to negotiate individually, I think we should have had a team with specialist attorneys who knows town-gown relations, particularly regarding sports, and also somebody who's familiar with Big Ten sports contracts and the amount of money that was on the table and in play with the commercialization of that space at Ryan Field.
I want to talk now about another really important project, ongoing project that's been in the works for over a year now, and that's the Envision Evanston 2045 comprehensive plan and rezoning that have now been decoupled, and I believe as recently as yesterday we got another update that it sounds like the Land Use Committee is basically not committing to having this comprehensive plan done by the April 1st election. So it's been drawn out, and there's been a lot of criticism from you and plenty of residents about kind of how this has been handled. So if you're elected, presumably this is going to be carried on to the next council term. How would you ensure that the best plan for Evanston goes forward and is eventually put into place when it comes to the comprehensive plan and rezoning?
I'm so glad that the comprehensive plan and the zoning have been decoupled. I am glad that the Land Use Commission said we're just not going to get this done before the election, and we give this as much time as necessary. I think getting more public input and specifically more data to drive that comprehensive plan is essential, particularly data that is particular to Evanston. So that's something I look forward to moving ahead with.
We asked Mayor Biss a similar question, but there's so much going on here in Evanston, but what would kind of be your first thing that you'd want to tackle as mayor of all the issues? Kind of what would be the first priority for you?
For me, it's transparency. First and foremost, how do we demonstrate to the public that this is an open book administration, and that starts at the top, that goes through the city council and all the way down as well. So I would have discussions with the city manager about how to do that. I will put in a new communications plan in place to get more input from residents, to meet with them on a regular basis, to attend ward meetings, to use technology to get the message out to people and maybe survey them better. That's the piece of it. And then the rest of it, everything else we want to tackle: affordability, downtown Evanston, equity. All of these things have to do, can be supported by that transparency and that kind of public input.
Thank you so much for coming on.
My
really
pleasure, Logan. Nice to meet
much.
you. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you to both candidates for stopping by our studio. Those full interviews will be up on our YouTube page in the coming days. And Jonas, we've heard from the candidates, but what about the voters?
Well, for that perspective, we're joined now by NNN's Annika Sani. Annika, which way are the residents leaning?
Thanks, Jonas. Both mayoral candidates made their appearances at the 3rd Ward Candidate Forum over the weekend. The room was packed with Evanstonians, and I got some of their thoughts on this race.
Right now, I'm not sure if the current administration and mayor are doing what's best for the city of Evanston or for the developers.
I respect what Mayor Biss has said. I feel that he gave a lot of really clear, concise answers. I'm beginning to understand more what some of the controversies are, but I think I need to gather more information still.
I'm not quite sure who I'm going to vote for yet, but I was impressed with them both. Kind of leaning toward our current mayor.
For Boarini. I'm voting for him because he's not Biss. What we need is moderation, and I hope we can get people in here who are moderate, concerned, and don't have some sort of political agenda.
Jeff is more open and transparent in everything that Dan says he is, but isn't.
So, and I think that's very important. We need someone that listens to their constituents, and Dan Biss does not.
And Bruce Enenbach, the last resident I spoke to, worked on Mayor Biss's prior campaigns for state office. But as you heard, he says he's not voting for him again this cycle. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks so much, Annika. And coming up, there's a spotlight on the next generation in Evanston's historically black 5th Ward. We'll hear from the candidates when we're back in 2 minutes.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
Thanks for sticking with us. Just west of campus in Evanston's 5th Ward, current council member Bobby Burns and challenger Carly Sutton are facing off. NNN's Talia Jackson learned that to residents, this race is about how the legacy of redlining still affects them today.
Bound by Church and Noyes Street, Sherman Avenue, and McCormick Boulevard, residents in Evanston's historically black 5th Ward are seeking something new for the upcoming election.
We need a new transformation for black boys and black girls in Evanston.
Charlie Hosh Jr. is just one of many residents in the 5th Ward whose main concern is the youth and their education.
I like to see these politicians is a focus where we're at the table where we can talk about what are new innovations we need to use and tools to really get our young boys to understand who they are.
Former District 65 teacher Carly Sutton says improving problems in education is core to his campaign for the 5th Ward seat.
I think it's a crisis and a disaster that needs to be addressed immediately.
At the same time, Sutton says in order to address the issue of affordable housing for older residents in Ward 5, he will aim to set up a land trust so
the land will stay affordable at least for the next 90 years.
Current councilmember Bobby Burns has different plans to address affordable housing. He wants to build on the agreement he made with Northwestern University during the Ryan Field construction.
$30 million over the next 15 years. And so much of our work over the next, over that period around housing is going to be funded by that.
And plans to target extracurricular programming towards middle and high schoolers, saying that providing programs that they are interested in is key.
If we can do that, not only at the city, but in our school districts, I think we'll get better results.
Using his second campaign as a chance to highlight his accomplishments in the 5th Ward so far, and elevate what he plans to do next.
So I enjoy kind of coming up with, identifying different issues or problems to solve with my neighbors and then working on them. And so I plan to continue to do that if given an opportunity to serve.
On April 1st, it is up to the people of Ward 5 to choose who will represent them. In Evanston, Talia Jackson, Politicat.
And if you're a resident of the 5th Ward, you can visit the Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center to cast your vote on April 1st.
In the 2nd Ward, Councilmember Chrissy Harris has two opponents for her seat, Darlene Cannon and Jacqueline Mendoza. The two candidates have challenged Harris on various issues, and as NNN's Alex Jong reports, the possibility of raising property taxes is a key point of contention in this race.
It's about women in Evanston who made a difference. There's some major players here, and I was actually nominated, and I feel very honored to be on the wall.
Chrissy Harris is facing challenge from Darlene Cannon and Jacqueline Mendoza for her council seat in the upcoming election. Following Alderman Peter Brathwaite's resignation in 2022, Harris was appointed by the mayor to represent the 2nd Ward on the city council. Cannon, who thought but missed out on the appointment 3 years ago, says the decision should have been made with more community input and through a process in which the mayor does not determine the outcome, quote, upfront or behind the scenes. Cannon says she prioritizes transparency and says she has concerns about accountability with the current Evanston leadership. But Harris says she's tried to be as clear as she can be during her time on the council, sharing as much information as she is allowed to disclose.
I've spent the past 2 years doing the work so people see and have an understanding of who I am and how I operate. So I think that always speaks more than what people say they can do. What have you done? And people seeing it.
Jacqueline Mendoza is a renter who says she moved to Evanston in 2023 for her son's education and to help care for her father. She characterized her primary focus as serving the needs and representing the voices of the 2nd Ward residents. Mendoza says she is firmly against increasing property taxes. The city has not raised property tax in the past 4 years, but Harris says moderate and reasonable tax hikes may be necessary to address the matters outside of the government's control, like pensions, insurance, and the loss of federal funding. In Evanston, Alex Jones, Northwestern News Network.
Our thanks to Alex for that report. Jonas?
While some races will only have one candidate on the ballot, that doesn't mean they're going unchallenged. 2 write-in campaigns have been launched in this year's election. Meg Welch, a federal worker, is campaigning against incumbent Jonathan Newsoma for the 4th Ward seat, and Vanessa Johnson McCoy, a real estate agent, is racing against current city clerk Stephanie Mendoza. Johnson McCoy says part of the reason why she's launching her campaign is her past experiences with the current city clerk's office. She says that she had to call 3 times to get information about the election rules, and the first 2 times she didn't receive an answer. She was told to send her questions in an email.
That would not be the first response under my leadership, that I would tell and train my staff, let the person ask their questions.
City Clerk Stephanie Mendoza responded to the allegations, saying to NNN, quote, "We're not election lawyers in the office, so anytime that someone calls most offices, we have to be very careful in how we respond. We usually ask for someone's email so we can send them the exact form." And if you're looking to vote for one of those write-ins, the Cook County Clerk's Office says that complete accuracy of a candidate's name is not necessary as long as what you write is close enough. And after the break, trouble in District 65. We take a look at the race for school board.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Ready, set, piano!
Welcome back. As Evanstonians head to the polls, they'll also pencil in their picks for 4 open District 65 school board seats.
The district, which includes Evanston and Skokie schools, is facing tough times with enrollment and funding. I spoke with the school board president. District 65's 10 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 magnet schools have a problem. Enrollment continuing to spiral down.
We have known that we've been losing students for quite a while, almost a decade.
Sergio Hernandez is president of the school board and says many issues are leading to the decline in enrollment, but primarily
due to a lack of affordable housing.
Evanston has seen its median house price raise more than 20% since 2017, and another 4.4% in only the last 12 months. This is roughly in line with the national average. Hernandez says this leads to some disappointing consequences, especially in Skokie.
The few schools that we have in Skokie, unfortunately, one of them will be closing, right? Bessie Rhodes, but
Dr. Bessie Rhodes School of Global Studies is the only bilingual school in the district, but the board controversially voted to close it last summer due to funding and enrollment concerns. Eric James is the parent of a 3rd grader who says he's also concerned about funding.
I'm quite concerned about recent moves to defund or eliminate the Department of Education.
He's worried changes at the federal level with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, combined with the shrinking student population here in Evanston, could lead to further closures or increased taxes.
It has to be replaced either by doing without, by increasing property tax, or finding it somewhere else.
Hernandez says he's still dedicated to quality education in Evanston. James hopes to see the improvements after the election.
I'm a big believer in public schools. I'm even a bigger believer in children, and that we have to do all we can.
As District 65 grapples with these issues, 12 candidates are vying for those 4 open school board seats.
Yeah, Jonas, NNN's Gabriela Umber-Hermedalio caught up with some of them and has more on their promises to fix the budget and protect students.
District 65's future has been at the forefront of parents' minds lately, with threats on both the local and national level. D65, a school district that used to be known for exceptional opportunities, is facing significant budget cuts and criticism for minority students' literacy rates compared to their peers. Some parents said enough is enough.
I started to think about running when I felt like voices in the community were kind of pitting crisis of the structural deficits against our ongoing crisis of racial inequality in education.
Andrew Weimer is one of the 12 parents running for the school board amid financial uncertainty within the district. The threat of the state having to take over the district is looming as debt builds, and recent executive orders meant to undercut the Department of Education and DEI initiatives add to those worries.
If one of the risks that we're including in our strategic plan is the potential for withholding of federal funds, then we can go to the community with this plan and say, we need to fund our schools on the basis of these priorities and the things that we want to accomplish, and also these risks.
While some parents are worried about their kids' school closing, others have seen that become a reality, including candidate Lionel Jensel and his son.
About 2 weeks in Bessie Rhodes, he said, "Daddy, I found my home." And I was overjoyed. And so a week later, the school district decided that they were going to close the school.
While Jensen says the closure was tough for his family, he says that it was his wake-up call to take action within his district.
Same way they plastered District 65 is going to be taken over by the state if they don't do this, is the same way, and with the same energy, I want them to plaster District 65 as a shining example of what can be if people come together.
As the time to vote approaches, candidates say that the community is most concerned about transparency from current school board members. They are urging parents to vote for a diverse new board that includes engineering, financial, and political understanding. Gabriela Umber-Hermedalio, Politicat.
Thanks, Gabriella. We should note, due to the massive field and time constraints, we couldn't include all candidates' perspectives in the show tonight, but we'll certainly be following this race as Election Day gets closer.
And as school districts here in Evanston grapple with Trump's executive orders, the president is set to deliver his first joint address to Congress of his second term in just a few minutes.
NNN's Nora DeCruz is at the Capitol in Washington with more on what we can expect.
Yeah, I'm at the Capitol where at 9 p.m. very shortly, Donald Trump will be addressing Congress in a joint presidential address tonight. And it's been a whirlwind of a few weeks with presidential orders and executive orders coming out of the Oval Office every few days, almost every day. And you know, traditionally, these kinds of joint addresses that President Trump is doing today, they've tended to be explanations for the work in the past and the work that is to come. Obviously, Donald Trump is anything but a conventional president. So the expectation today is that this will be more of a victory lap from the president, with the theme of the speech tonight being the renewal of the American dream. It's expected that he will talk about his election win and his actions that have come in the first 43 days in office. And he also posted on Truth Social that he will tell it like it is. This is the first time that he's speaking to Congress since 2020, when the global pandemic was just a discussion that was beginning to be introduced and impeachment trials were going on. Today, the context is very different. His speech comes after tariffs that he's threatened for weeks have been introduced and taken into effect against China and Mexico and Canada. Also, aid towards Ukraine has been suspended, he declared yesterday. We'll be searching for explanations, but again, the expectation is that this will be more of Trump doubling down on his actions and his decisions, and also doubling down on his stance towards Ukraine after the tumultuous meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Another thing to note is that Elon Musk will be here today, cementing his position as one of Trump's closest advisors, and also this display of unity and power that the two have been keen to promote. I'll keep you updated with how things go. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nora. We should note Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who represents Evanston, announced earlier today that she is boycotting Trump's address tonight.
And coming up, environment and the election, how one group is spreading the word about zero waste to help the city meet its climate goals.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
Trying to work my way out of the prison system was the most difficult challenge of my life. It only became tangible once I became a Northwestern student.
Welcome back to our Evanston's election special. One big issue we're following this election season is the city's push to achieve zero waste by 2050. NNN's Mila Branson checked in on how the city and community members are working to achieve it.
We all know the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And in Evanston, a group of concerned residents has taken it to heart.
The point of the circular economy is that one person or one business's waste could be an asset to another person or business.
A working group of Evanston residents recently created the Circular Evanston Roadmap, a plan to help the city meet its target of zero waste by 2050.
It's not about the measurement of zero waste. It's about the goal that you look at it and you say, how do we not have waste?
Fourth Ward Councilmember Jonathan Newsoma says Evanston has made significant progress reducing emissions since City Council passed the Climate Action and Resilience Plan in 2018. But he says more can be done to reduce waste.
I would encourage Evanston residents to get one of those green-lidded yard waste compost bins, to fully utilize recycling, and then to get a smaller garbage can.
Newsoma says the city will be reassessing its waste franchise contracts in the next few months. He says they'll consider changes like mandating composting and reducing the standard size of garbage bins.
We don't need the huge garbage can. We can save ourselves money by doing the right thing at the same time.
With those plans in the works, residents can easily reduce their own waste by composting.
About 25% of what goes to a landfill in Evanston is compostable.
Through a partnership with the Collective Resource Compost Cooperative, Evanston residents can fill up either buckets like this one or totes with their food scraps and then swap it out whenever they're full.
It helps the consumers, the customers, because the cost is less because we have this franchise agreement, and it helps us because we have more route density.
Collective Resource Compost Cooperative Zero Waste consultant Mary Beth Shea encourages composting whenever possible, but says a mindset shift is needed to make lasting change.
Most people start with recycle, and that's the mistake. Starting with reducing is how we get there.
Circular Evanston plans to present their roadmap to City Council in March to outline what measures the city can take to reduce waste. Newsoma says he hopes Council listens to the group's recommendations.
If we can do it here, I think that helps spread the message to other communities that aren't quite as progressive as Evanston, that it's feasible.
In Evanston, Mila Branson, Politicat.
Great reporting, Mila. The city of Evanston also offers free compost drop-off at the Gibbs Morrison Cultural Center and behind the Robert Crown Community Center.
And now that you know a little more about the candidates on the ballot, let's talk about how you actually cast that ballot. Luluya Tekle joins us now. Luluya, Election Day is April 1st, but what date should the voter be aware of before that?
There are a couple other key dates coming up that you should have on your calendar. March 16th is the last day to register online to vote. On March 17th, early voting begins. Head over to Evanston's early voting site, the Civic Center basement. If you're looking to automatically receive a mail ballot before each election, staying on the vote by mail list, March 27th is the last day to request a mail ballot for permanent vote by mail. March 31st is the final day for in-person early voting, but mail-in ballots will still be accepted through April 1st. Keeping these dates in mind, let's dive into who can actually vote in this election. Any registered suburban Cook County voter with a driver's license, state ID, or social security number may request a mail ballot through an online or paper application. You must be at least 18 years old and live in an Evanston election precinct at least 30 days prior to Election Day. You may not claim the right to vote anywhere else. So if you're a Northwestern student, you have to register here before you can cast your ballot. Voters can sign up in 3 different ways: through an online application, a paper application, or an in-person voting. For online users, if you have an Illinois driver's license or state ID, you can register online through the Illinois State Board of Elections website. For voters who prefer a paper method, if you do not have a driver's license or state ID, fill out a form online, print, sign, and mail it in. For residents registering in person, one of the many Cook County Clerk's locations is the place to be for registration. Voters will receive a mail notification of their polling place prior to the election. Check your mail in case you have already received this. Election Day vote centers will be open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Find your polling place and precinct map at the Cook County Clerk, Illinois.gov website. For Northwestern students, polling places near campus are the Alice Miller Chapel and the Noyes Cultural Arts Center in Ward 1. In the last consolidated election in 2023, voter turnout was 13.8% with over 1 million registered voters and around 200,000 ballots cast. Add your names to the list of voters participating in the local election. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Lulia. And coming up, as candidates battle for spots on the next council, 2 current members are saying goodbye. They reflect on their careers after the break.
I'm Kelly McEvers, founding host of the NPR podcast Embedded.
I'm James Edwards, host of the Unresolved podcast from Frontline.
I'm Antonia Cereijido, former senior producer of Anything for Selena podcast and current executive producer at Elias Studios.
My narrative, since I've been locked up and kind of made my transition, has been like redemption, accountability.
When I come into the classroom environment, every individual that sits amongst me takes education seriously.
My relationship with Giannis is unique. We're from the same country, we're from the same city. Being a Northwestern alum, I think, has tremendous advantages in the sports industry. To me, that community, it's been with me for 20 plus years.
Welcome back. As new candidates compete for a seat on the city council, some are already ready to say goodbye. NNN's Allison Miller caught up with 2 council members who are stepping down at the end of their terms to hear why they're making the move.
Melissa Wynn is not quite checked out yet, but after 28 years representing Evanston's 3rd Ward on City Council, she says it's the right time to step down.
Sitting there with opinions about some of those long-range issues and realizing I have to stop myself and say, I'm not going to be here.
For nearly 3 decades, she's made hundreds of decisions on everything from reparations to residential land use to reviving the downtown. Out of them all, there's one effort Wynn is proudest of, a 1.5-year-long grocery store battle.
Everyone in Evanston knew that we were Trader Joe's customers, and we just had to convince Trader Joe's that we were their customers.
Building this Trader Joe's was a key issue for Wynn during her time on the council. And over in the 7th Ward, the other retiring council member tackled an even bigger issue: rebuild Ryan Field.
It's been particularly tiring this last term because of the Ryan Field issue. And so I'm just ready for a break.
Eleanor Ravel has spent 9 years advocating for her 7th Ward residents. To keep track of it all, she uses a massive paperwork system.
I actually kept a log of people saying yes and people saying no.
As the chair of the Housing and Community Development Committee, Ravel hopes her successor will continue on her fight for lowering housing costs in the city.
We know we have an affordable housing problem, but we don't know how many more units we really need.
Wynn is also concerned about affordable housing. She says Evanston's residents can make the difference on big issues like these.
We have a lot of interesting, thoughtful, caring people who live in Evanston, and I'm really going to miss the people contact.
Wynn and Ravel will stay on the council until late this spring. In Evanston, Allison Miller, Politicat.
In retirement from the council, both Ravel and Wynn hope to stay involved in the community through volunteering. That was such a great story.
Oh, so sweet. And that's going to do it tonight for our Politicat Evanston election special. Remember, early voting begins March 17th and Election Day is on the 1st of April. I'm Jonas Calderon Blum.
And I'm Logan Schiciano. Good night.